Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I just love this part. I really do, because I know there's a couple of things that are very expensive that our guests have entrusted me to be the host of for a short time. And I want to thank them for that. That is their time. It's such a precious commodity that so many of us misuse. We first don't understand what it is, and we misuse the beauty of it. And so I want to thank Karen for coming and sharing some of that such precious commodity. The other is journey. The journey housed who she was and made her this beautiful, beautiful spirit that we're about to engage with and get a chance to know her at a deeper level so that we also can learn of ourselves and grow as individuals while we're here on this planet. Karen, thank you so much for coming.
So thank you so much, Karen. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here with you today. So thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome. I love to hear all of the babies you've given birth to. I tell people we are pregnant when we go through our journey, and they manifest in books, podcasts, programs, all kinds of things that we had hidden and was not available to us until we went through our journey. What were those things that you give birth to as a result of your journey?
Things that I've given birth to. Okay, I'll be concise about this. So last year I became an international best-selling author. I co-authored a book that sold like #1 international bestseller in, I think it was 14 countries. And that was a real,
Congratulations.
thank you. And a few years before that, I also co-published a book that sold quite well. And I have a free ebook on my website. That's something else that I've birthed. And then I've birthed a new program as a result of having gone through lots of pain, which you and I discussed earlier. So basically, I went through a very dark night of the soul just earlier this year, as it happens. And having gone through multiple dark nights of the soul throughout my life and having lots of tools at my disposal, this time it felt very different because age of 52, suddenly I found myself, I have no children, I have no brothers or sisters, I'm currently living in a foreign country, and my parents are both dead. And I came out of a almost 10-year relationship with my intimate and business partner quite recently, earlier this year, and I suddenly found myself completely lost and alone and really not knowing what to do next, not knowing where to go, not knowing who to turn to. Although I have a support network around me, I felt completely alone. And so I've reinvented myself multiple times throughout my life. And actually, I realized this time that I had just fallen, despite having all of these tools at my disposal, because I've been on my spiritual path for at least 25 years now. I'm trained with lots of great teachers. I'm a certified spiritual teacher myself. And I realized that this time I had to be very, very conscious and intentional about reinventing myself and starting over. So with all my pain, we spoke about solitude earlier. I literally spent weeks in solitude and drew from my 25 years of global leadership experience and my 25 years of deep spiritual practice and teaching, and took the best that I could from all of those 25 years, condensed it into a program that I put myself through for weeks in solitude at home. And then I thought there must be other women specifically who feel in a similar situation sometimes, maybe not with such drastic circumstances as what I found myself in, having to start from zero in every aspect. But still, we all need to reinvent ourselves at some time. And I thought, what I've done here could help so many other people and save them so much time. So I condensed everything that I've learned over 25 years into an 8-week program. And so that's the other thing that I've birthed more recently.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I tell people always find an individual, we label them coach and coaches. Find someone who's gone through some stuff. Ask them their backstory because The backstory will be a compass by which you can know that you will be guided. There are some of those that have gone through um, just a 2 hour course and whatever and come out and have nothing. But when someone has gone through some stuff, as they say, they know, and they will know the question to ask you to get your desired outcome without you even knowing, because they will locate you from listening to you. Um, and once they hear you, I tell people there's a difference between listening and hearing. When they hear where you are, they can locate your precise location and ask that question that will cause you to see, and you will get an awakening. So make sure your coaches or your guides, as they say, I like to call them guides, have been through some stuff. So here you are, Karen. You have what a beautiful story, and you can tell of the pain from the delivery of your words, some that you have experienced. Walk with us, introduce us to this young woman who has been uh, birthed, and she is now in her family, the first space by which we visit for a while, and we call that family. And we are there, and in this space, we are now being programmed by family and folks that have been, if you will, damaged through trauma. And so they are now going to deposit things into you and I and cause us to begin to develop perspective by which we are going to govern our life. Invite us to that space where your family is,
Yes.
your mom and dad, and so forth, so we can get a taste of who you are.
Okay, so I'm from Liverpool in the UK, and my parents were very young when they had me, and they met. My mother became pregnant out of wedlock. They were literally forced to marry because, that was the time in the late 60s, early 70s. They were both very, very young. The marriage was very volatile. It didn't last very long. They were divorced by the time I was 4. It was very acrimonious. But just before they divorced, what had been happening was I was having precognitive dreams. I've had precognitive dreams since I was very young, which led me to do a lot of dream work later in life. And so I was having these precognitive dreams. And then I had a life-threatening injury whereby it was a severe head injury and it was like touch and go. But I was in bed and couldn't move, and I think that really impacted my parents' relationship as well because my mother had to spend so much time by my side. And I remember the arguments that used to happen around me when I was in the bed. But I came through that. They were divorced. I continued with the precognitive dreams, and I had a very rich inner life. I was an only child from a broken, penniless home. So I spent a lot of time alone and developed a very rich inner world. And so that continued until I was about, I would say, 11, when a group of children discovered that I was sat in the house that we lived in. It had like a garden, but people could walk past the garden. I was in the garden one day and I was sat there in a circle with all of my friends who were,
Yeah,
as real as you are right now. And so I
yeah,
was having a beautiful conversation out loud with all of my friends, and there were a group of children and they just made so much fun of me. And then my mum said, Karen, you mustn't do this anymore. You're drawing attention to yourself. You need to stop. Don't tell me about these dreams anymore because the precognitive ones were often unpleasant. So I just kind of put a lid on it, as so many of us do when we're young.
yeah, yeah.
And luckily, I managed to enter a really good Church of England school that had a fantastic curriculum because I realised that I just needed to escape from the environment that I was in. It wasn't for me, and I knew there was so much more to life. And because of this rich inner world that I had that felt so real to me, and plus the results from the dreams, I just knew that there was more that I wanted to explore. So I chose the route of Christianity for many, many years and really enjoyed that. Gave me a lot of comfort. And then as soon as I had finished my studies, my university studies at the age of like 23, somewhere around there, once I had more kind of headspace, I ardently devoted myself to my spiritual studies and practice. Then I found myself living abroad, and I had a crisis of faith because I was completely alone. I had a handful of books that I could read, but I had absolutely no one to talk to. And I was desperate, let's say, to have a
Yeah.
sign from God or the universe that all the things that I felt and thought and intuited were true. And one night I remember I was sat in bed reading a book, and it was about spirituality.
Hmm.
And I remember sitting in bed and closing the book
Yeah.
and closing my eyes to contemplate what I had just read. And then suddenly I had an experience that I still am not quite sure how to describe it, so I call it like an out of body experience. I
Hmm.
had this out of body experience where I was a mermaid sat on a rock. It was dark, it was cold, but I didn't feel cold. It was late at night, and I was just looking out over at the sea. But at the same time, I received a massive download, answers to all the questions that I had, and so much more. So that
Yeah.
crisis of faith was cured in seconds. The next minute, I'm back in my body, and I'm like, wow, what was
Mm.
that? I want it again. That felt so awesome. So fast forward about 2 years from there, and the internet was invented. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, I wonder if I'll find anything spiritual on the internet. So I went onto the internet, and I came across a platform back in the day, I think it was called Witchbox, but they had a section for the UK. And I was, by this time I was living in Wales in the UK. So I clicked on Wales, and there was basically classified that said, we're an ancient Welsh family tradition. We're looking for 3 people who are not from the family to share the tradition with them, because we want to open the tradition out to not people who are blood relatives of the family. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So I wrote to them very, very quickly. We arranged to meet, and when we met, the first question they asked me was, what brings you here? So I told them the mermaid story. They started to laugh. I didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. And then Johan, the guy who I met, he said to me, Spirit told us that the mermaid would find us, and here you are.
Wow.
So they ceremonially adopted me into their family and shared their beautiful tradition with me during the course of about 4 or 5 years, until Johan, who was teaching me the tradition, he passed away. And then it's very deep, very beautiful, very esoteric, incredible. And one thing that I would just like to say from that, I remember Johan sharing a meditation with me one day, and it was a particular way to work with a tree, which I remember it blew me away. I cried. It was so beautiful, so moving. And then almost like 15, 20 years later, I was working with a shaman who'd spent 25 years in North and South America working with shamans. And he and
Hmm.
I did work together for about a year and a half. And one day he said, I want to teach you something really esoteric. This is from the tribe in Peru. I have permission to share it. And it was the same meditation that
Wow.
this little Welsh tradition had shared with me like 15 years earlier. So I was like, wow, things like that just like really blew me away. So yes, once Joanne had passed away, I started to work with other people out in the wider world, and went on to do kind of Reiki to master teacher level, worked with lots of different shamanic healers and practitioners, became a shamanic teacher and healer myself, went on to do something called active dreaming with the world's best dream shaman. He's a guy called Robert Moss, to capitalize on all that dream work I'd done in the past. And yeah, I've just kept on going and never, never, never stopped.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell people always, we hide in work, in the busyness of work. Um,
Mm,
and that is why sometimes we need a shaking, if you will, to grab of our attention, because the work that we're doing is of course admirable and so forth, but we still haven't visited the self. And until we get there, it's usually something else. And so we constantly moving, and I always tell people keep moving, because if you're stagnant, all kinds of bugs and mosquitoes begin to occupy your space. So you have to
yes.
keep moving. So here you are. You've been exposed to much. Young girl, young woman, girl. I saw where your mom had intervened and said you need to get rid of your friends, and I thought how traumatizing for a young girl at such a young age to be told that she cannot play with her friends anymore because of so forth. And so here she is, she's moving and dancing within the spiritual realm, meeting some of the teachers and so forth. When she was in that space, as you said, you were busy, and you are so busy, as you stated. What was happening to you in your journey, being exposed to such intense energies and individuals? You know, the shaman. I've from South America, so I'm very aware of that those type energies because we had several in our home. How did you manage? How did you exist with you, Karen, at that time?
Yes, so I've always considered myself to be a grounded person, and I think, the knack in any spiritual practice is to have one foot in this world and one foot in the other worlds.
Yeah.
And I've always been very conscious of having that balance and that harmony. So I made sure that I was always very well grounded. So that could be things like, making sure that I put bare feet on the ground out in nature, making sure I'm out in nature, being conscious about what I was putting in my body in terms of how that might ground me, how that might affect my energy, and just generally doing things to keep me grounded.
Yeah. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. I mean, in your busyness, you are setting the foundation, if you will. You're maintaining the foundation by which you are moving through your space. And as you're doing all of that and making sure that your foundation is secure as you're moving through your life, invite us into some of that space as you're moving through your busyness. You're here, the shaman is teaching all these different things. What started and who started to come into your space, meaning the types of people, the types of energy that you began to notice showing up in your space? Because when you're exposed to all of that, you are going to be attracting a lot of damaged folks, if you will.
Okay. I would say a real broad range. So, throughout my kind of global corporate career, I've
Yes, give us
always.
the, yeah.
So, luckily, the way that I phrase it is I've always managed to land on my feet no matter what's happened. So, I've had different, like, I've been a managing editor of a digital publication for 7 years. I've worked as a headhunter. I've worked in public relations and strategic communications. I founded my own business in 2008, and then throughout these more recent years, I've gone on to do more coaching certifications. So I've always had a foot in the professional world, and fortunately for me, I've been very fortunate in meeting wonderful people along the way in each of those roles and every country that I've worked in and in every industry. I've been very fortunate, I must say. And I think one of the things that helps me with that is I hold the intention every day that people who I
Yeah.
meet are going to be happy to come across me, that the interaction is going to be mutually beneficial and for the highest good, and that everything's going to flow smoothly. And I think by holding that intention, that has kind of like really helped me throughout my life. And yes, I have had, as you said, we do attract different types of people into our space. And yes, I have had my fair share also. But I'm also very good at establishing boundaries. I think it's very
Hmm.
important to have firm boundaries. And I do that various ways. One is through a meditation. One is very simply, if I'm having a conversation with somebody, and let's say it's somebody I don't know, because what I believe is that like you and I we can now have an energetic connection.
Yes.
There's an invisible connection between us now because we're here doing this live. So every time we interact with somebody, even if it's just an hello or a smile in the street, that energetic thread then exists. There's a connection between those people. So I was always kind of very conscious of that. And so I would do regular meditations to clean up those connections, to remove any of the toxic energy that I felt was there. And sometimes, even if I was having a conversation with people, I would literally just put an invisible divide between us. So if I felt that that person was, particularly trying to absorb my energy in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
then I literally just put an invisible energetic barrier between us, so that no, that stays there, and what's here stays here. And I find that to be very effective for me.
Yeah, I've done
And
that, Karen. I've
mhm,
done that, especially when I walked in and I discovered meditation. Meditation helped me understand my energy, how to control my energy. And in that space, because I had to deal with the corporate world as well, in that space, in my meditation in the mornings, I would control my day there. And I knew that people are energy and that
yes,
just like you did. And in my conversation, once I locate that person, I can bring that shield, if you, as you stated, to protect myself, so that my energy would not be um, uh, dissipate, or be sucked up, as they say, from that individual, and I would control that um, conversation even more. So I would make sure that I'm present in every aspect of this interaction so that I can protect myself. So I totally get it. And it is a tremendous way by which we can control the degree of expenditure of our energy. And once I started to understand that, Karen, a lot of my life and my interaction with people changed. And I get it. I totally get it. So here you are actually practicing and living um, as one awakened from a young child and learning all of these things and implementing them in your life. When did your day, we talked about it briefly, I call it the day of visitation, you know, and we know you talked about that dark day of the soul. It's an opportunity. I tell people, darkness comes to awake the creator that is within you. You didn't need it until darkness showed up. And um, what was your situation like? What came into your space, and how did it jolt you to wake you up, Aaron, to say, okay, you need to go in a little deeper? What was it, and how did you manage it?
okay. I'll tell you about the most recent episode. So I remember this was when I was like particularly suffering, feeling very lost, alone, stuck, confused, etc. And I remember I was just sat one night journaling, and sometimes when spirits around me trying to get my attention, I get a tingling at the back of my head, like the old brain chakra, and it really
Mm-hmm.
started to activate. And I had been getting a lot of activations whilst I was going through this process, but this like really caught my attention. So I put my pen down, stopped writing, and just felt into this sensation, closed my eyes. And then suddenly I had this feeling that was so real, that I was just the most alone I had ever been in my life. It was like being at the bottom of a very deep, dark well.
Uh,
And it felt very real, very scary, very sudden, and it felt very, very deep. And I remember feeling the fear in that moment and thinking, oh my gosh, what's this? How am I going to get out of this? I can't stay here. How do I get out? And I could feel myself starting to panic a little bit. And then it was like, okay, Karen, calm down. You have the tools. And I just literally called out for my spiritual support. I put myself in a column of sparkly, divine love and light. And then
mhm.
instantly, it was like a second later, I felt as though I could feel the physical presence of my guides, my ancestors, my spiritual supporters. I felt like they were really starting to fill up my space. And suddenly I felt the most loved I'd ever felt. And
Wow.
at the same time, I received lots of messages about duality, unity. I was shown how we're constantly hurting each other when we hurt. And so that information was very valuable to me in that moment. And then the overarching message was, Karen, the universe has got your back. And that I felt after that, after feeling like the lowest I'd ever felt in my life, to suddenly feeling them literally in seconds, the most loved and supported I'd ever felt in my life. That was like so empowering. And I haven't looked back. And now I feel, yeah, that I've brought all these tools together. It was interesting, Ken, that you mentioned the word compass earlier, because my program's actually called the Inner Compass, and it's all about helping people find their North Star. And so I know now that I've kind of created all of this in a nice tidy bundle, if ever I need to course correct, I can get myself back on course really, really quickly, rather than just allowing it to continue unconsciously. So also knowing that and having had that experience, yeah, it was, really tough when it happened. But afterwards I was like, I feel so empowered now. And now I've got all of this and I know exactly what to do if I ever find myself off course again.
That is a beautiful
Yeah.
story, isn't it? Amazing. I tell people, um, your life will always be circular until you make a decision. Um, when one says to themselves, that's it, never again. I don't want to be here. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to. Um, Something happens within the brain, and I tell them that all this life, and it could be years, many years, that many years people are thinking about it. I said, I've talked to people. I worked in healthcare and as a skilled nursing facility, and here are people who are dealing with their 60s and 70s, laying um, preparing for the next journey. And so I found it really interesting to get a chance and opportunity to talk to many of them. And I discovered that many of them didn't know who they were. And just from talking with them, and I remember just being sad because it propelled me to want to find out more about me, even though I was in the space like you were, traveling in the realm of spirituality for many years. But it was in those conversations that I began to notice something, a similar thread, that most people settle. And I told you that after my incident where I was in a hospital, almost died, and was in the ICU for several days, I remember coming out and saying to myself, "You're not going to settle." And that's when I began to move forward in my life. And so here you are, Karen. You've learned so much. You've been gifted by being around such beautiful, strong, wise individual within the realm of the spirit, and your guides as well that are here and gave you that intense emotional experience of loneliness and love. As you said, you began to incorporate all of those things. What steps did you begin to take at this moment from there to begin to put together your compress program? What, how, that is an intense, you think about it, from the pit of darkness to loneliness to the height of, that's night and day. And from that space, you began to navigate. Talk to us about how that navigation was, because everything growth, I tell people, is never linear. So how did you move in that space? And then you gave birth to this, the Inner Compass program.
Yeah, whilst I was having that experience and I was shown or given the messages about unity and duality, and I was literally shown myself with another individual, how the energy was passing between us and how, any hurtful word, how we were both suffering from that, how any
Yeah.
hurtful deed, how we were both suffering from that, how is it affecting our energy. So because of that, the first thing I thought, okay, it's time to take stock of kind of like where I am right now and how I got here, and to properly close chapters with things from the past that I felt I needed to release with individuals, organizations, so people, places, organizations. And I did a lot of meditation work, a lot of cord cutting, a lot of releasing in different ways. So by doing things on the beach, by doing things out with trees,
Yeah.
through meditation, through writing letters, deleting them, through having lots of conversations, higher self to higher self with other individuals, etc., until I felt as though I had said everything I wanted to say, heard everything I wanted to hear, cut all the cords that needed to be cut in that moment, and released everything I possibly could so that I could have like a clean slate, so
Yeah.
energetically, so to speak. And then I started, so once all that was done, then I started to incorporate more things, because I I've always known that I'm here to serve in some way, shape, or form. And one of the frustrations for me, I feel, is, having had the global kind of corporate career, and the spiritual path is kind of like how to marry those.
Yeah.
Even when I started out with the coaching, I was coaching executives in presentation skills, communication skills, executive coaching, and I was able to incorporate elements of who I am into that, but still I felt I was getting closer, but it wasn't enough. I knew that I wanted to be able to marry things together. So I started to get very intentional, like, okay, just writing things down, drawings, doodling, scribbling, just getting everything down onto a screen, onto paper. What do I love? Why do I love it? How long could I talk about that for if nobody paid me? What would I like to get paid for that? So many different questions I asked myself.
Yeah.
And then once I did a lot of meditation as well. I do lots of journeying and meditation. That's kind of like one thing that really works for me. And so I did lots of meditations to bring about mind-heart coherence, to ensure that although here was saying to me, yeah, Karen, you like doing this. Why don't you choose this niche for your coaching? Or what about this one? So there was, alternatives going on up here. But then I was
Yeah.
like, okay, so let's drop into here. Let's bring them together and let's see what happens. And then it became very clear to me that I want to serve women who need to reinvent themselves for some reason after a life change. And so then I started to get more intentional about that, continued with the meditations, the journaling, the spending lots of time in nature. And I also sought the help of a therapist to
Mm-hmm.
help me, because I just felt like I wanted some professional input from somebody else to help me unravel certain aspects of what I've been through. So I worked with a therapist for a while, and that was very, very helpful. And then I just continued to, once I had my goal, passion, purpose clear, I became very intentional about ask my questions like, what resources do I have available to me right now? Who can help me? What else do I need? How can I go about acquiring those things or those resources? What timeline do I think I need? What else can I do? Who can I talk to? And I just started to do something every day and ask myself the question, okay, if I do this now, how helpful is this to get me to this goal that I've said that I want to achieve? I used my imagination a lot, which I've done throughout my life. So I used my imagination to put me into different scenarios that I thought that I wanted. And I would feel into those and feel how they felt. I would feel how it felt in my body. I would use my body as a good litmus test. And once I had the clarity that I sought, I just continued doing something every day throughout the day, and then I did abstain from things which I literally shut the outside world out. So there was no television, there was no radio, there was no news, things like that. And I just focused on me, because I believe that we have to focus on the inside to effect change on the outside. So I really went inward for quite a few weeks.
Yeah. The space of solitude, as we mentioned, a lot of
Yeah.
people are afraid of going there, Karen, because it's a scary space. I love how you describe what you're doing, how you're excavating and digging deeper, asking the questions and becoming more focused, if you will, taking away all the side things and fine tuning your focus to get precisely what you want. And I was just inside just happy as you're saying it, because for the listeners, I'm happy for them that you're talking about this and showing them that once you make a decision to do something, it's going to take some work, and it takes the inner work that is necessary to bring out what you desire. And so she talked about shutting down all of the outside sources, the news, the phone, all the other things, the distraction. Those are outside sources that are designed to keep you where you are. If you want to get deeper, you're going to have to shut those down. I do that from time to time. I still do that in my life, Karen, where I call it my fasting period. And my fasting period, I fast usually every year. I'll do a 30-day fast. And that fasting, when I was in the corporate world, of course, I had to be in there and do that and so forth, but I would stay away from TV and different things like that. I would keep it to a minimum to what I needed to do in order to be in my corporate space. But as several years now, I don't have all that distraction. So I'm away fasting from everything, from the noises. And my fast and my solitude time has become even deeper. Some things that I get out of there is just fascinating, and I will just meditate on that for several weeks, and then I will begin to regurgitate those meditation as I, deposit it in me, and I bring it into a format by which I can now serve, and so I get it. So here you are, reinvented your life. One of my favorite people on this planet was William Shatner. I used to watch him, and so how many times he reinvented his life, and I'd be like, that's the way to do it. And so I just love him for that quality about him. He was able to do many things, and he was my idol in a sense. I would use him as motivation. One of these days, he'll know it probably hearing this. But anyway, so here you are, you're fine-tuning you. As you're fine-tuning you, your child is growing, and that child of yours is beginning to formulate in your mind, in your spirit, and you're about to give birth, if you will, to the books that were residing, the program, all of that stuff. When you were there and you had delivered your children, how did you feel, Karen? What happened to you as those things were coming out?
I had to pinch myself several times. To jump up and down, to do a little samba dance. Woo! So yeah, there was a lot of celebration, a lot of celebration, a lot of gratitude, and the gratitude I like to demonstrate also in a conscious way. So I like to take offerings out into nature. And that's one of the ways that I like to give thanks. So there was a lot of celebration and a lot of gratitude.
All of you guys that have been listening to us, I want you guys to get into her program. The reason why I excavate someone's story is so that you can see and hear that they have gone through some stuff. Because I keep telling you guys, it is imperative. Karen mentioned that she brought in a team member to help her to excavate things about her. And that individual that you're going to bring into your life, look at them simply as a team member that you are bringing into your space, into your team, a guide, if you will, that has been through the mountains, if you will, a few more times than you have. And they're able to say, no, don't go there, come this way. And they know that if you step on that particular mine, you will get damaged. And so they're trying to protect you. Everything that they do in the conversation that they're having with you is with you in mind, because they want you to see you. And so that is why I have these conversations to excavate things, so you can see who these folks are. And I want you guys, you have to go. We have members all over and listeners all over. And I want to encourage you guys to come into Karen's space, get her books. We're going to provide all of those things so you can dance with her, so that you can mingle in her energy and be a part of her world and learn. Because you're going in and you're coming into her space. I tell people, make sure when you're going there, you're not going there to be a member. Members are people who just pay the money and linger around and not doing anything. But when you are going to be a disciple is different. Someone that is going to be disciplined, someone is going to be committed. They're looking for change. Be a disciple in your life and get into Karen's space so that she can assist you in your changing. And so you can become this beautiful light that she is to us. I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's been an honor.
Thanks.